My name is Savannah. I am 27 years old, and I will never forget the sound of my mother-in-law laughing while tears rolled down my cheeks. I thought I had found my forever when I married Derek. I tried so hard to fit in with his family, but that night he stood in front of his mother and sister and tore me apart with his words. They laughed. I cried. Then I heard military boots at the door. My father walked in with two armed soldiers. Everything changed. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever felt humiliated by the people who should have protected you, hit that like button because you will understand exactly how this felt. And make sure you subscribe because what my father did that night changed everything. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, surrounded by the sounds of military life. The rumble of helicopters overhead, the distant echo of training exercises, the crisp salutes exchanged between soldiers on base. My father, Colonel Richard Hayes, served in the United States Army for over 30 years. He was the kind of man who commanded respect without ever raising his voice. When he walked into a room, people straightened their posture. When he spoke, people listened. My mother, Margaret, worked as a nurse at the military hospital on base. She had a gentle soul that balanced my father's stern discipline. Together, they created a home filled with structure, love, and unwavering support. I was their only child, and though my father could be tough, I never doubted his love for me. He taught me to stand tall, speak clearly, and never let anyone make me feel small. Growing up as a military kid meant moving around a lot when I was younger. I learned to adapt, to make friends quickly, and to hold on to my sense of self even when everything around me changed. By the time I was in high school, we had settled at Fort Bragg, and I finally had roots. I graduated near the top of my class, went to college for interior design, and landed a job at a firm in Raleigh after graduation. Life was good. I had a career I loved, parents who supported me, and a future full of possibilities. I never imagined that the man I would fall in love with would nearly destroy everything I had built. I met Derek Lawson at a charity gala in downtown Raleigh. It was one of those fancy events where everyone wore their best clothes and pretended to care about causes they would forget by morning. I was there representing my design firm, mingling with potential clients. Derek was there representing his real estate company. He approached me near the silent auction table holding two glasses of champagne. "You look like you could use one of these," he said with a charming smile. I laughed and accepted the drink. He was handsome in that classic American way. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair with just a hint of gray at the temples, even though he was only 32. His eyes were warm and his smile made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We talked for hours that night. He was attentive, asking questions about my work, my interests, my dreams. He remembered every detail I shared and brought them up in later conversations. When he walked me to my car at the end of the evening, he asked for my number and I gave it to him without hesitation. Our courtship was like something out of a romance novel. Derek opened doors for me, pulled out chairs, sent flowers to my office every Friday. He remembered my favorite coffee orders, surprised me with tickets to concerts, and planned elaborate dates that showed he was paying attention. After years of casual dating and disappointing first dates, I thought I had finally found someone special. 8 months into our relationship, Derek proposed. We were at the same venue where we first met, and he had coordinated the entire thing. The string quartet, the private room, the rose petals on the floor. When he got down on one knee and asked me to be his wife, I said yes, before he even finished the question. I was so happy that I almost missed the look in his eyes. That flash of something that was not quite joy, something more like satisfaction, like he had won a prize. But I was in love, and love makes you blind to the things you do not want to see. When I brought Derek home to meet my parents, I was nervous in a way I had never been before. My father had always been protective of me, and I knew he would scrutinize any man I brought home. My mother was easier. She wanted me to be happy and she was willing to give anyone a chance. Dinner started well enough. Derek was polite and respectful. He complimented my mother's cooking, asked my father about his military career, and told charming stories about his work. My mother was delighted. She kept shooting me looks across the table that said she approved. But my father was quiet. He watched Derek the way he probably watched enemy combatants during his deployments, observing, analyzing, taking mental notes. After Derek left that evening, my mother hugged me and told me she thought he was wonderful. But when I went to say goodnight to my father, he pulled me aside. "There is something about him I do not trust," he said. I rolled my eyes. "Dad, you think no one is good enough for me?" "Maybe," he admitted. "But the way he looks at you when you are not watching, it is possessive, not loving." I dismissed his concerns. I told myself that my father was just being overprotective, that he would come around once he got to know Derek better. I promised him I would be careful, but I had already made up my mind. Derek was the one. "A father always knows when something is wrong with his child," my father said as I was leaving, "and I just want you to be careful. A man's true character shows when things get hard. Remember that." I promised I would. But I did not listen. Not really. The wedding was beautiful. We held it at a historic estate outside Raleigh with white flowers everywhere and 200 guests watching as I walked down the aisle. Derek looked handsome in his tuxedo, and when he said his vows, I believed every word. That day I also officially met his family. His mother, Gloria Lawson, was 60 years old, with silver hair styled perfectly and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was the kind of woman who could deliver an insult disguised as a compliment, and you would not realize you had been cut until hours later. Derek's older sister, Diane, was 35 and still lived with their mother. She had never married, and from the way she looked at me during the reception, I got the feeling she resented me for something I could not name. Their father had passed away when Derek was young, and from what Derek told me, Gloria had raised both children on her own. She was fiercely protective of her son. During the reception, Gloria gave a toast that was technically polite, but left me feeling cold. She talked about how much she loved Derek, how special he was, how she hoped I understood the responsibility of being his wife. She did not say a single nice thing about me. Derek laughed it off later. "That is just how my mother is," he said. "She will warm up to you." I believed him. I thought they just needed time to get to know me. I told myself I would be the best daughter-in-law they could ask for. I would cook clean, be pleasant, be helpful. I would earn their love. I had no idea that their love was never available to earn. The first few months of marriage seemed normal enough on the surface. Derek and I moved into a nice apartment in a gated community in Raleigh. It had 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a balcony that overlooked a small pond. I decorated it with care, choosing colors and furniture that reflected both our personalities. I wanted it to feel like our space, our fresh start. I continued working at my design firm, and I loved my job. I was good at it too. My clients appreciated my eye for detail, and I had started building a reputation as someone who could transform any space into something beautiful. I was on track for a promotion, and life felt full of promise. But small changes began to creep in, changes so subtle that I did not recognize them for what they were. Derek started commenting on my clothes. "That dress is a little short, don't you think? You are a married woman now." Or he would ask who I had lunch with, what we talked about, whether any men had joined us. At first I thought he was just interested in my day. I thought it was sweet that he cared. Then he started checking my phone, just casually while I was cooking or showering. I caught him scrolling through my messages once, and when I asked what he was doing, he laughed it off. "I just like knowing what is going on in your life," he said. Is that so wrong? I told myself it was not a big deal. Couples shared everything, right? That was what marriage was about. His mother called every single day, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. Derek always answered no matter what we were doing. If we were eating dinner, he would excuse himself and talk to her for 20 minutes. If we were watching a movie, he would pause it without asking and have a full conversation with Gloria about her day, her health, her opinions on everything. Diane started showing up unannounced. She had a key to our apartment that Derek had given her without telling me. I would come home from work to find her sitting on my couch drinking coffee from my kitchen, flipping through my magazines like she owned the place. "Oh, I just wanted to visit my brother," she would say. "You do not mind, do you?" I did mind, but I did not say anything. I did not want to cause problems. Gloria and Diane started commenting on everything I did. My cooking was not as good as Gloria's. My cleaning was not thorough enough. My decorating choices were too modern, too cold, not homey enough. "Derek is used to a certain standard," Gloria told me during one visit. "His mother kept a perfect home. I hope you are working hard to meet his expectations." "Maybe Savannah should take some cooking classes," Diane suggested with a smirk. "I can recommend a few." I smiled and nodded and swallowed my frustration. I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted them to accept me. So I changed. I cooked the recipes Gloria gave me. I cleaned the apartment twice as often. I rearranged my furniture to suit Diane's suggestions. It was never enough. No matter what I did, I could not measure up to their impossible standards. Derek started to change too. He became more critical, more short-tempered. When I made dinner, he would push his plate away if it was not exactly what he wanted. "My mother would never serve this," he would say. When I came home late from work because of a client meeting, he demanded to know where I had been, who I was, with why I had not called. 6 months into our marriage, Derek made a request that caught me off guard. "Give me your paycheck," he said one evening. "I will manage our finances. It is easier that way." I hesitated. I had always been independent with my money. But Derek insisted it was what married couples did, that it would simplify our budget, that he was better with numbers anyway. I gave in. After that, I had to ask for money for everything. Derek gave me a weekly allowance for personal expenses, and I had to account for every purchase. If I spent more than he expected, he wanted receipts and explanations. I told myself this was normal. I told myself this was what marriage looked like. I had never been married before. How was I supposed to know Derek also started discouraging me from seeing my friends? "Your friends are all single," he said. "They will give you bad ideas. They do not understand marriage." Slowly, the lunches and coffee dates stopped. My friends stopped inviting me because I always said no. Eventually, they stopped calling altogether. He did the same thing with my parents. "Your father never liked me," Derek would say, whenever I mentioned visiting them. "Why do you want to go there? He is just going to fill your head with negative thoughts about me." So I stopped going home as often. When my mother called, I kept the conversations short because Derek was always nearby listening. When my father called, I sometimes did not answer at all because I did not want to deal with Derek's mood afterward. I told myself this was just an adjustment period. All newlyweds went through rough patches. Things would get better once we settled into our routines. I was wrong. 1 year after our wedding, Derek lost his job. He told me the company was restructuring, that his entire department was eliminated. But months later, through a conversation I overheard at a party, I learned the truth. Derek had been fired for misconduct. Apparently, he had a habit of berating his subordinates, screaming at coworkers, and creating a hostile work environment. His boss had finally had enough. Derek did not look for a new job right away. He said he needed time to decompress to figure out his next move. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. He spent his time on the couch watching television, drinking beer, and criticizing everything I did. The apartment was never clean enough. The food was never hot enough. I was never attentive enough. "You cannot even keep the house clean while I'm stressed," he would snap. "What do you do all day?" "I work," I would remind him. "I have a full-time job." "Some job," he would scoff. "You barely make enough to matter." His drinking increased. What started as a beer or two in the evening became half a bottle of whiskey by midnight. When Derek drank, his temper became unpredictable. Some nights he would just pass out on the couch. Other nights he would pick fights over nothing. Gloria called constantly, but not to check on me. "Take care of my son," she would say. "He is going through a hard time." A good wife supports her husband. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay. One night Derek came home later than usual, smelling like alcohol. I had already gone to bed because I had an early meeting the next morning. He stormed into the bedroom and turned on the lights. "Why is there no food?" he demanded. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. "I left dinner in the refrigerator." "You just need to heat it up. I want hot food when I come home," he shouted. "Is that too much to ask?" "Derek, please calm down," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Something in him snapped. He grabbed the television remote from the nightstand and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, leaving a dent in the drywall. "Do not tell me to calm down," he snarled. He moved toward me, and before I could react, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was so tight that I felt the bones grinding together. I cried out in pain, but he did not let go. He leaned in close, his face inches from mine, his breath hot and sour with whiskey. "You do what I say when I say it," he hissed. "Do you understand?" I nodded frantically, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, yes, I understand. Please let go." He released me so suddenly that I fell back against the headboard. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. I heard the front door slam moments later. I sat there in the dark, cradling my wrist, sobbing quietly. There were already bruises forming dark purple marks in the shape of his fingers. The next morning, Derek came home with flowers. He knelt beside the bed where I was pretending to be asleep and apologized over and over. "I was drunk," he said. "It will never happen again. I am so sorry, Savannah. You know I love you." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I admitted the truth about what was happening, then I would have to admit that my father had been right all along, that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. So I accepted his apology. I covered the bruises with long sleeves. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It was not. A few weeks later, I was visiting Gloria for Sunday dinner. While I was helping in the kitchen, my sleeve rode up, and Diane noticed the fading bruises on my wrist. "What happened there?" she asked, pointing. I hesitated, debating whether to tell the truth. Something in me hoped that if Gloria knew, they would help me. They were women, after all. They would understand. "Derek grabbed me," I admitted quietly. "He was upset, and he grabbed me too hard." Diane laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, please. Derek would never hurt anyone." She called Gloria over and showed her my wrist. Gloria examined the bruises with a dismissive expression. "Savannah men have tempers," Gloria said matter-of-factly. "A good wife knows how to manage that." I stared at her in disbelief. She was not concerned. She was not sympathetic. She was blaming me. My husband was the same way. Gloria continued. "You learn to not provoke them. It is part of marriage." "Derek is a good man," Diane added. "Do not ruin his reputation with stories." I stood in that kitchen, surrounded by the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread, and I realized something terrible. These women would never help me. They would never believe me. They would always choose Derek. From that moment on, I knew I was completely alone. I started to realize that what was happening to me was not normal. It was not what marriage was supposed to look like. I wanted to reach out to my parents, but I was paralyzed by fear. Fear of Derek finding out. Fear of admitting that my father had been right. Fear of the shame I would feel. One afternoon, when Derek was out somewhere and I had the apartment to myself, I finally broke down and called my mother. Her voice was warm and familiar, and the moment I heard it, I started to cry. "Savannah, sweetheart." "What is wrong? I miss you, Mom," I choked out. "I miss you so much." "Then come home," she said without hesitation. "Your father and I have been worried. Come home, baby girl." I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to confess all the things Derek had done, all the ways he had hurt me, all the fear I carried every single day. But before I could say anything more, I heard the front door open. Derek was home early. "I have to go," I whispered quickly. "I love you." "Savannah, wait," my mother started, but I ended the call. Derek appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, his eyes narrowing when he saw the phone in my hand. "Who were you talking to?" he demanded. "Just a coworker," I lied, my heart pounding. "About a project." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the suspicion in his eyes. But he did not push. Not that time. I did not know it then, but that phone call would set everything in motion. 3 months passed. The abuse did not stop. Derek never hit me with his fists, but he did not need to. The bruises on my arms, the cruel words that cut deeper than any knife, the constant control and manipulation were enough to break me down piece by piece. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. The confident, ambitious woman who had walked down the aisle 2 years ago was gone. In her place was someone small and afraid, someone who flinched at loud noises and apologized for existing. Then came Gloria's 61st birthday. Derek informed me that we would be attending a party at his mother's house. All of her relatives would be there, about 15 people in total. I was expected to help with the preparations, bring a gift, and be on my best behavior. I spent the entire day before the party cooking dishes that Gloria had requested. I went shopping for a gift, eventually settling on an expensive silk scarf from a boutique downtown. I wanted to make a good impression. I still stupidly wanted them to like me. The night of the party, I put on my best dress. It was navy blue, elegant but modest. Derek approved of it, which was the only reason I owned it anymore. He had made me donate most of my wardrobe because he thought my clothes were inappropriate for a married woman. We arrived at Gloria's house right on time. The living room was decorated with balloons and streamers, and a large cake sat on the dining table. Relatives milled about, making small talk and admiring the spread of food. I tried to blend in. I helped serve drinks, made polite conversation, and did everything I could to be the perfect daughter-in-law. But Gloria barely acknowledged me. When I handed her my gift, she opened it, glanced at the scarf, and set it aside without a word. Diane made a comment about how I looked tired. "You should take better care of yourself, Savannah. For Derek's sake." I smiled and said nothing. Midway through the party, one of the relatives approached me. She was an older woman, an aunt of Derek's, and she seemed genuinely friendly. "So, Savannah," she said warmly, "what do you do for work?" I brightened at the question. It had been so long since anyone had asked about my career. "I am an interior designer," I replied. "Actually, I was just promoted to junior designer at my firm last month. It has been really exciting." Derek appeared at my side. I had not even noticed him approaching. "She is just an assistant," he said dismissively. "Nothing important." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "Actually," I corrected gently, "I was promoted. I am a junior designer now." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had made a mistake. Derek's expression darkened. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. The aunt looked between us awkwardly and excused herself to get more food. Derek leaned close to my ear. "We will talk about this later," he whispered. My stomach dropped. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I could not focus on conversations, could not eat, could not do anything except wait for the inevitable. When the last guests began to leave, Derek grabbed my elbow and steered me toward the back of the house. We ended up in Gloria's formal living room. It was a stuffy space filled with antique furniture and family portraits. Diane followed us in and closed the door behind her. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Derek turned to face me, and the mask of charm he wore in public was completely gone. "How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone?" he demanded. I just corrected a small detail I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made me look like a liar," he snapped. "You contradicted me in front of my family." Gloria entered the room and stood beside her son, arms crossed over her chest. "Savannah, a wife should support her husband, not contradict him," she said coldly. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable." Diane smirked. "She thinks she is so important now with her little promotion." Derek took a step closer to me, and I instinctively backed away. "You know what your problem is?" he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you are better than everyone." "That is not true," I whispered. "But let me tell you something, Savannah. You are nothing without me. Nothing." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I tried to hold them back. I would not give them the satisfaction. "I picked you up from nowhere," Derek continued. Your father is just some military grunt who thinks he is important because he wears a uniform. And you come into my family acting like you belong here. Gloria nodded approvingly. Derek is absolutely right. You should be grateful for everything he has done for you. Instead of improving yourself, you try to make my brother look bad, Diane added. Maybe if you focused on being a good wife instead of chasing some pointless career, your marriage would not be such a mess. The tears came then no matter how hard I tried to stop them. They rolled down my cheeks as the three of them stood in a semicircle around me, united in their cruelty. Look at her, Derek scoffed. Crying. That is all you know how to do? Gloria laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was sharp and cold, and it cut through me like a blade. Pathetic, Diane agreed. Absolutely pathetic. I told you she was not right for you, Gloria said to Derek. You should have married Caroline. She would never act like this. I stood there frozen, unable to speak or move. The man I had married, the man I had believed loved me, was tearing me apart in front of his mother and sister. And they were enjoying it. I had never felt so small, so worthless, so utterly alone. Then I heard it. Heavy footsteps on the hardwood floor. The distinct sound of military boots. Everyone in the room fell silent. The door to the living room swung open and my father stepped inside. Colonel Richard Hayes was in full dress uniform, his medals gleaming on his chest. His posture was ramrod straight, his expression carved from stone. Behind him stood two men I recognized from family gatherings over the years. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb and Staff Sergeant Anthony Reyes. They were in uniform as well, and both had sidearms holstered at their hips. The air in the room changed completely. Derek, Gloria, and Diane stared at my father like they were seeing a ghost. I looked up at him through my tears, and for the first time in months I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner of the room. My father's eyes swept across the scene, taking in Derek's aggressive posture, Gloria's smug expression, Diane's cruel smirk. Then his gaze landed on me, on my tear-streaked face, on the way I was hunched over, making myself as small as possible. Something in his expression hardened. "So this is how you treat my daughter," he said. His voice was calm, measured, but there was steel underneath every word. I had heard that voice before during phone calls with subordinates who had disappointed him. It was the voice of a man who was holding back a storm. Derek straightened up, trying to regain his composure. "Colonel Hayes," he stammered, "this is a misunderstanding. We were just having a family discussion." "A misunderstanding?" My father took a step forward. "I heard every word you said." I blinked in confusion. How was that possible? How had he known to come here? How had he heard Dad? I whispered, "How did you—" "Your mother knew something was wrong," he said, his eyes never leaving Derek. "She called me after you hung up on her last week. The fear in your voice, the way you cut the call short. She knew." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with regret. "I have been watching, waiting, hoping I was wrong about you." His gaze fixed on Derek. "But I was not wrong." Gloria finally found her voice. "Now wait just a minute," she said sharply. "This is my house. You cannot just barge in here with soldiers and intimidate my family." My father did not even look at her. "Ma'am, I suggest you stay quiet." Gloria's mouth snapped shut. I had never seen anyone silence her so completely. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. He held it up so Derek could see it. "Derek Lawson," he said. "I had some friends look into you." Derek's face went pale. "You had no right. I have every right when it comes to protecting my daughter." He opened the envelope and began to read. "Fired from 3 previous jobs for misconduct. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend in Georgia. And an assault charge that was dropped because the victim was too scared to testify." Each revelation landed like a punch. I watched Derek's carefully constructed facade crumble with every word. "Those are lies," Gloria insisted, her voice rising. My son would never do those things. Diane nodded frantically. Derek would never hurt anyone. My father finally turned to look at them. Would never, what hurt a woman? He looked at me at the way I was still trembling. He already has. Sergeant Webb stepped forward slightly. His presence alone seemed to fill the room with authority. Colonel Hayes has served this country with honor for over 30 years, he said. His word carries weight in every law enforcement agency in this state. Staff Sergeant Reyes added, "We can make this official if necessary. All it takes is one phone call." Derek's bravado crumbled. He looked from the soldiers to my father to me, and I could see the panic in his eyes. This was not a situation he could talk or bully his way out of. My father stepped closer to me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "I am sorry I did not act sooner," he said softly. The tenderness in his voice broke something loose inside me. Tears streamed down my face, but for the first time in 2 years they were not tears of fear or shame. They were tears of relief. "I should have listened to you from the beginning," I whispered. "You are listening now." He squeezed my shoulder gently. "That is all that matters." Derek suddenly regained some of his false confidence. He straightened his spine and jutted out his chin. "You cannot just barge into my mother's house with soldiers," he said. "This is illegal. I am going to call the police." Sergeant Webb did not flinch. "Sir Colonel Hayes is a decorated officer with 30 years of distinguished service. We are here as personal guests, not in any official capacity." Staff Sergeant Reyes nodded. "But as Sergeant Webb mentioned, we can make an official report if that is what you prefer." My father fixed Derek with a stare that could freeze molten steel. "Derek, you have 2 choices. 1, you let Savannah go peacefully. She takes what belongs to her and leaves. 2, I make sure every law enforcement agency in this state knows about your history. Your future employers will know. Your neighbors will know. Everyone will know." Derek's face twisted with rage. "You cannot do that. Try me." Gloria grabbed her son's arm. "Derek, do not let him bully you. This is your home, your family. Stand up for yourself." Derek looked at his mother, then at my father, then at the 2 soldiers standing silently behind him. He was doing the math, calculating his odds. And for the first time since I had known him, he realized he was outmatched. "Fine," he spat. "Take her. See if I care." My father nodded once, then turned to me. "Get your things, sweetheart. We are leaving." We drove back to my apartment in silence. My father sat in the front seat of his truck, his hands steady on the wheel. I sat in the back, sandwiched between Sergeant Webb and Staff Sergeant Reyes. No one spoke, but their presence was comforting. Solid. Safe. When we arrived at the apartment, Derek was nowhere to be seen. He was probably still at his mother's house, licking his wounds and plotting his next move. It did not matter. I was not afraid of him anymore. I walked through the rooms that had been my prison for 2 years, seeing them with new eyes. The furniture I had chosen so carefully now felt like props in a play. The walls that had witnessed my tears and my fear now seemed paper-thin, unable to protect me from anything. "Take your time, sweetheart," my father said, standing by the door. "We are not going anywhere." I gathered my belongings methodically. Clothes that I had bought with my own money before the marriage. Books that had been gifts from my mother. Photo albums from my childhood. Everything that was truly mine fit into 2 suitcases and a few boxes. I looked around one last time. I had spent so much time here trying to make it a home. Trying to make Derek happy. Trying to be the wife he wanted. "I wasted 2 years of my life here," I said quietly. My father shook his head. "No. You learned a lesson. That is never a waste." The front door opened and Derek walked in. He froze when he saw me with my suitcases, my father by the door, the 2 soldiers standing guard. "You are really leaving?" he asked. I did not look at him as I continued packing. "Yes." He took a step toward me. "Savannah, we can work this out. I am sorry. I was stressed and I did not mean those things." Finally, I turned to face him. "Which things?" "Calling me pathetic. saying I am nothing without you, or grabbing me so hard I had bruises for weeks. His face contorted. I was drunk. You were always drunk, I said, my voice steady. Or stressed. Or having a bad day. There was always an excuse. I walked over to the side table where I had left my wedding ring that morning. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my palm. It had once meant everything to me. Now it was just a piece of metal. I deserve better than excuses. I placed the ring on the table with a soft click. Derek stared at the ring, then at me. His eyes narrowed. You will regret this, he said. My father stepped forward, placing himself between me and Derek. She will not. Derek glared at him, but he did not dare make a move. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. Let us go home, my father said. The drive to Fort Bragg took several hours, but I barely noticed the time passing. I sat in the passenger seat of my father's truck, watching the familiar landscape of North Carolina scroll past my window. The rolling hills, the pine forests, the small towns we passed through. Everything looked different now, brighter somehow. When we finally pulled into my parents' driveway, my mother was waiting on the porch. The moment I stepped out of the truck, she ran to me and wrapped me in her arms. Welcome home, baby girl, she whispered. I collapsed into her embrace and cried, really cried, for everything I had lost, for everything I had endured, for everything I had been too afraid to say out loud. My mother held me through all of it, stroking my hair and murmuring words of comfort. My father stood nearby, his hand on my shoulder, a silent pillar of strength. For the first time in 2 years, I was safe. The first few weeks were hard. I slept a lot, cried a lot. Some days, I could not bring myself to leave my childhood bedroom. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me like a physical force. But my parents did not push me to talk. They did not ask questions or demand explanations. They simply existed around me, cooking my favorite meals, sitting with me during the long evenings, letting me know through their actions that I was loved unconditionally. Sergeant Webb and Staff Sergeant Reyes stopped by a few days after we returned. They brought flowers and a card signed by several soldiers who had served under my father. Ma'am, Sergeant Webb said we served with your father for years. Any daughter of his is family to us. I thanked them both, overwhelmed by their kindness. For so long I had believed that I was alone, that no one would believe me or help me. I had forgotten what it felt like to be surrounded by people who cared. When I was ready, my father connected me with a lawyer named Grace Patterson. She specialized in domestic abuse cases, and from the moment I met her, I knew I was in good hands. We will make sure you get everything you deserve, she said during our first meeting. Derek tried to fight the divorce at first. He claimed I was exaggerating, that our marriage had been fine, that I was being manipulated by my father. But when Grace presented the evidence she had gathered, including the background check my father had commissioned, Derek's lawyer advised him to settle quietly. In the end, Derek agreed to a quick divorce with no alimony demands. He did not want his history made public. His reputation mattered more to him than anything else. Gloria called me once about a week after I left. Her voice was cold and threatening. You will pay for humiliating my son, she said. My father took the phone from my hand. Mrs. Lawson, if you contact my daughter again, I will personally ensure that the restraining order from Georgia becomes public record. Do we understand each other? She hung up without another word. She never called again. 3 months after leaving Derek, I started putting my life back together. I applied for jobs in the Fayetteville area, wanting to stay close to my parents while I healed. To my surprise, I was offered a position as a senior designer at a well-respected firm. They had seen my portfolio and were impressed by my work. I rented a small apartment about 15 minutes from my parents' house. It was modest compared to the place I had shared with Derek, but it was mine. I decorated it slowly, choosing every piece with care. Bright colors, comfortable furniture, plants that filled the rooms with life. I also started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Sarah Holloway. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was not my fault. Abusers are skilled at making victims feel responsible, she explained. They isolate you, control you, and make you believe that you deserve the treatment you receive. But you did not deserve it, Savannah. No one does. Slowly, I began to rediscover who I was. The confident woman who had walked down the aisle 3 years ago was still there, buried under layers of fear and self-doubt. With time and patience, I was learning to bring her back. 1 year after I left Derek, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. I had a career I loved, an apartment that felt like home, and friendships that nourished my soul. My relationship with my parents was stronger than ever. Every Sunday I drove to Fort Bragg for dinner, and we would sit around the kitchen table laughing and talking like the old days. My father had retired from the army and taken up gardening as a hobby. He grew tomatoes and peppers and herbs, and my mother used them to cook elaborate meals. They were happy together, content in a way that gave me hope for my own future. Sergeant Webb got married that spring, and I was invited to the wedding. It was a beautiful ceremony full of laughter and joy. Staff Sergeant Reyes was still on active duty, but he sent postcards from wherever he was stationed. I kept them all on my refrigerator, small reminders of the people who had helped save my life. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek had moved to another state. He was engaged to someone new, a young woman who had no idea what she was getting into. Part of me wanted to warn her, but I knew from experience that some lessons cannot be taught. They have to be lived. I did not hate Derek. Hating him would mean he still had power over me, and he did not deserve that. But I did not forgive him either. Forgiveness was not something I owed him. It was something I would decide on my own terms in my own time. Gloria and Diane never reached out again. They remained in their bubble of denial, convinced that their precious Derek could do no wrong. I pitied them in a way. They would never know the truth. They did not want to. One evening, a few months after my divorce was finalized, I sat on my parents' porch with my father. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. We sat in comfortable silence, sipping iced tea and watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. "Dad," I finally asked, "how did you know to come that night?" He smiled, a rare expression that softened his stern features. "A father always knows when his daughter needs him," he said. "Your mother told me about the phone call. Your voice, it was not the voice of my strong little girl. Something was wrong. I could feel it." He took a sip of his tea before continuing. "I drove through the night, called Marcus and Anthony on the way, explained the situation. They did not hesitate for a second. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. 'I am sorry I did not listen to you from the beginning,' I said. My father reached over and took my hand. 'Savannah, you do not apologize for trusting someone. That is not a weakness. That is your heart.' He squeezed my fingers gently. 'The weak one was Derek, who took advantage of that trust. You are stronger than you know. You always have been.' We sat together until the stars came out, father and daughter, survivors both. Looking back now, I understand that the night my father walked into Gloria's living room was not just about him saving me. It was about me finally seeing the truth. I spent 2 years making excuses for a man who never deserved my loyalty. I ignored warning signs because I wanted to believe in love. I silenced my own instincts because I was afraid of what they were telling me. But I learned something important from that experience. Real love does not humiliate you. Real love does not isolate you from your family. Real love does not leave bruises on your skin or scars on your soul. My father taught me that protection is not about control. It is about giving someone the space to be themselves while standing ready to catch them if they fall. I do not hate Derek or Gloria or Diane. Hating them would mean they still have power over me. And they do not. Not anymore. I am free. Not because someone rescued me, though I am grateful beyond words that my father was there when I needed him. I am free because I finally chose myself. I chose to walk away from a life that was killing me slowly. I chose to rebuild. I chose to heal. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and it was worth every single struggle. If you are in a situation like mine, please know this. Your worth is not determined by how someone treats you. Help is out there. Family, friends, hotlines, shelters. You are not alone. And sometimes the first step to freedom is simply admitting that you deserve better. Because you do. We all do. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone stand up for you when you needed it most? Who was it, and what did they do? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. You are stronger than you know, and you are never truly alone. Take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you in the next video.